For a while, I've been fascinated pondering the term Game Master for TTRPGs or Dungeon Master for D&D specifically. There's the traditional historical interpretation, of course, of the Dungeon Master being the ultimate authority over a dungeon that they're running, or a Game Master being the ultimate authority over their game. But to me, the term speaks more to the pursuit of mastery more so than just being the master. The former is a process versus the latter, which is just a position. And the deeper we dive into the process, the more engaging and fun game mastering becomes. Hi, I'm John. This is Dragon Mind, where we discover our best selves through gaming. And today, we're exploring the essential experience on our journey of game mastery. Let's get into it. Okay, today we may be getting a little more philosophical, so bear with me as we orient ourselves on our journey of game mastery. For some context, to get to know me, for the past 12 years, I've been a career martial arts instructor, as well as a former professional part-time game master. What I find fascinating about TTRPGs is how much they overlap with my experience teaching martial arts. In fact, the martial arts school I teach at specializes in personal growth and development through the martial arts, which is why this channel is all about exploring the personal growth benefits of TTRPGs. One of those elements is learning how to pursue mastery, a process of excellence rather than a static position. In the martial arts tradition that I train in, when one becomes a master, it's not some end-all be-all title, but rather a new beginning of training at another level. It's an acknowledgement of personal commitment to excellence that acts as kind of a signal to senior masters that a solid foundation has been laid so that they can impart even more complex knowledge. It's not about becoming complacent with one's current skill set. It's about smoothing out transitions, making techniques more efficient, and ultimately kind of getting paid more for doing less. In a similar way, I think those on the path of game mastery in TTRPGs, thinking of it as a process rather than a position, are willing to, over and over again, stick to putting refinements into practice, which is oftentimes not really pretty. That being said, like some martial artists, I've definitely come across some game masters that easily get distracted by shiny things like new techniques or just trying to get a bunch of 3D terrain to make a scene pop, rather than focusing on mastery of the TTRPG's essential experience, which is a term used by game designer Jesse Schell in his textbook, The Art of Game Design, a book that likes to look at game design in the abstract through 100 different lenses, rather than claiming to have some unifying, universal theory of game design as a whole. It's a book that I recommend to all game masters because a lot of times it asks questions that allow you to reframe your relationship with game mastering in a way that allows you to produce consistent, high-quality results. There's a reason, of course, that the essential experience, which is what we're talking about today, is the very first lens that Schell covers. At the end of the day, when you strip away all the complexities and nuance of a game's design, what is at the core of the experience that the players enjoy? And you know that someone, maybe even you, is game mastering masterfully if they can consistently deliver that experience no matter what system they're running, what story they're telling, or which players are at their table. And just as a side note, when I say masterful game mastering, what I'm speaking to is a phenomenon, not a tenured position. As a game master, you could be a complete beginner, and you may deliver a masterful session early on, only to have the next one be a complete dumpster fire. I've also met game masters that run games pretty consistently, but again, become complacent in the praise that they've already earned, that they stop refining their skill set, and then kind of spin in place with the players that they already have, which again is totally fine, but it isn't really the process of pursuing mastery. Anyways, getting back to the essential experience, here's another way to think about it. When the game is done, what are the moments that the players are raving about? What makes those moments special, and what words do your players use to describe them? Now for this video, I am going to use 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons as my example, because it is the system that I'm personally most familiar with, and also the one that I have a feeling the most people are going to be able to relate to. So when I think about D&D and its essential experience, the thing I really think of is the imaginative freedom, along with an uncertainty over how things will work out. The other day, in a martial arts class that I was helping teach, I had a student come up to me and say that they were interested in D&D, but they had no frame of reference for what it was really like, and they were really too nervous to just join a group cold. So then I just said, okay, imagine you're on a bridge, and on one side there are a bunch of goblins with spears waiting for you, and on the other end there are a bunch of orcs with axes. What do you do? And so this student wanted more information. They started asking questions, to which I gave them a little bit of detail. And eventually they just said, you know, I just jump off the bridge and use my magic hang glider. To which I said, okay, here's a die. Because in our martial arts school, we actually have one of those foam D20s. And then they rolled the die, got a 14, and I described how they were successful. And then I was just like, that's it. That's all D&D is. I don't think it was as emotionally captivating an experience as Brennan Lee Mulligan just had with Sid and Olivia over on their podcast. Now that was a masterful job. But it did relay some of the things about D&D that make people kind of nervous. Yeah, there are rules, there are dice. The dice often determine the outcome, but really a lot of it comes down to the imagination, in that there are things like magic and items that you can use to help you on your journey. And just because it's not possible in our real world doesn't mean it's not possible in a D&D world. Not every TTRPG is like this, of course, but I do feel that that is part of the essential 5th edition D&D experience. So often, I read on forums or blogs or whatever about TTRPG enthusiasts getting stuck in the weeds, talking about this system versus that system, or this storytelling technique versus that storytelling technique. And I've definitely sat at tables where game masters have become so enthusiastic about some little element of their session's design, whether it's a combat mechanic or a new mini that they bought, that they lose sight of what actually matters at the core of the game. Now, of course, you are allowed to have a totally different answer to what the core experience of D&D is. And your table may have an equal or more amount of fun than the games that I game master. But that's part of your journey to mastery. The answer actually doesn't matter as much as the question. Really, I think if you were to have a core takeaway from the point I'm trying to make, it's that game mastery, the process of pursuing excellence, occurs through practice and observation. Not being too quick to justify your own decisions, especially if that'll limit your potential to grow as both a game master and a person. The key thing with the process of mastery, it's not easy and it's incredibly rewarding. So now I want to hear what you have to say. What do you think of the process of game mastery versus just game mastering? What do you feel is an essential experience that you enjoy facilitating in a game that you like to run? And do you find this philosophical discussion interesting, or are you more looking for solid, concrete advice? Let me know in the comments down below. Have an awesome day, and remember, your story matters. Bye-bye now.